We will begin by you, Fabien. Hello, Fabien. Can you introduce yourselves and also give us some context about the climate and about the sponsoring that we want to implement to change the world, called the Sport Sponsors Climate Pledge?
Thank you, Francois. So I'm Fabien. I'm the co-founder at 17 Sports. 17 Sports is a sports impact company operating at the intersection of sports, business, and purpose. Our name stands for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And basically, we exist to really solve the biggest problem in the world by using the transformative power of sport. That's who we are. To give a bit of context, first of all, I mean, we know that businesses and the corporate sector, they have a responsibility in the fight against climate emergency. But we also know that sport is, on one side, part of the problem, and on the other side, also part of the solution. So 2 years ago, with ChangeNOW and now with Fair Play for the Planet, we start thinking, how can we drive systemic change together and really help the business sector to take responsibility and to accelerate the transition of the business of sport. And one way to do that is to redirect financial capital that exists and to redirect towards more environmental friendly solutions. So that's why we came with the idea of the pledge to really help the sponsors to move and to call the right holders, the properties, to accelerate into the ecology transition. And so basically the Sports Sponsor Climate Pledge today aims to go further than traditional charters by correlating and conditioning corporate sponsorship investment in sport to more eco-friendly properties and right holders.
Thank you, Fabien. Stuart, hello. Stuart, can you also introduce yourself to the audience and also give us some explanation of why Acore joined the pledge? What is your ambition through this?
Of course, and thank you very much for inviting me here. So I'm Stuart Wman. I lead global sponsorship, member experiences, and corporate hospitality for the Acore group, so hotels and all associated services. I've been at the group for 2 years, just over, and I've spent over 20 years in the sponsorship industry, and I'm also a board member of the European Sponsorship Association. And each year we actually research and survey our members across Europe, brands, rights holders, agencies, suppliers, to ask what the trends will be for the coming 12 months. And sustainability has been #1 for the last few years. I passionately believe that this approach is just going to be table stakes. So it's about being on the right side of history. Everybody has suddenly woken up to the fact that climate change is real. We are in the process of buying time because science will have to find the answer. And we need to buy time to allow science to find the answer so we don't do too much damage to the planet in the meantime. Why Acore have signed the pledge? We signed it last year, one of the founding members. Really important to us to say what we believe in and do what we believe in. And it's very, very close to our values. We know that the travel industry is part of the problem, and we are therefore also part of the solution. And we're passionate about trying to reduce our footprint across multiple areas in this area. #1, eliminating single-use plastics, reducing food waste, reducing energy consumption across our hotels, increasing diversity and inclusion across our group globally, but also investing in future technologies to research what are those opportunities for clean energy in the future. So we really, really do put our money where our mouth is, and this is a natural extension of that commitment.
Thank you, Stuart. You, Emilie, can you also, like Fabien and Stuart, introduce yourself? And also my question is, we speak about the sponsors, but the right holders has also a role to play. Can you share us the role of your organization to try to tackle also sustainable issues?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Emilie Llorens. I'm Sustainability Manager for the French SailGP team, which is a team representing France in the International Sailing Championship called SailGP. And luckily enough, we work with Acore, which is our main sponsor in all sustainability aspects. So I've been working with the team to try to implement a lot of sustainability measures. And SailGP is the startup. The league started a few years ago, and they decided to put sustainability at their heart. So sustainability is really part of their DNA. And they set a really ambitious objective, which is to be the most sustainable league in the world. That said, it's really ambitious, but then you need to put a lot of resources and a lot of actions. So what SailGP did is that they decided to use their core value, which is competition, and also they like the team fighting against each other. They're really trying to make a league that's really readable for spectators, so it's only country competing against each other. So they wanted the sustainability part to be exactly the same, to be easy to understand for spectators. So what they create what they call the Impact League. Do you want me to? Yeah. So the Impact League is currently a parallel championship. So you have the sport championship at every event that goes during the season. Every team won points depending on the sport result. But they also initiated another league, which is the Impact League. And at every event, every single team has to fill a report about their sustainability action. So it goes from how the team did go to the event, how many waste the team produced, how many children have you educated, and everything is taken into consideration. At every event, you got points. And then during the whole season, you also need to develop some more big project dedicated on some focus area, for example, waste or energy.
Okay, thank you, Emilie. I come back to you, Fabien. Can you maybe remind for the audience who have signed the pledge last year, which organization, and can you give us more updates maybe about the next steps and what will be scheduled for the next months?
Yeah, of course. So last year we had 4 founding members, Acore being one of them, but also EDF, Sodexo and Orange. So we were very pleased to start last year with those 4 founding members. In terms of next step, I mean, of course, we want to increase the number of signatories, but committed signatories. I think that's very important, and I know we're going to announce new signatories today. And from the pledge perspective, I mean, we want to go further to what it is, and of course, helping I will say the sponsors and the signatories to be educated on the topic, to provide advisory how they can embed the carbon reduction plan into a sports sponsorship strategy. And we also talk about adding a carbon performance indicator within the sponsorship contracts to really go a step further.
Yeah.
So that's really what
yeah. We will talk about that also more precisely in the next minutes. I come back to you, Stuart. My question is, when you sign a sponsor today, we spoke about sustainable KPIs or strategy. What is the strategy of Acore if you want to sign a new partners or so with your current one? We know that this pledge can also help speak and enhance the relationship that you can have with the right holders. It's a great way to communicate, to engage a discussion to be better and to be tackling this issue. So can you give us some maybe update about that?
Of course. We're talking about Scope 3 emissions, right?
Yeah.
And our sponsorships are part of our supply chain. There's no way around that, right? So we get judged just like our corporate customers come to us and say, what are your green credential sustainability policies, etc. That then needs to be passed on. We all need to be working collaboratively to achieve the same goal of reducing our climate impact. 2 different areas. One is with existing partners and one is with looking at who we work with in the future. So working with our current partners, and we have to distinguish between those that are already doing brilliant stuff and those that are towards the start of their journey, shall we say, right? We should not be penalizing either party. We should be rewarding those organizations that are moving in the right direction and that are committed to moving in that right direction. So it's helping identify where they are, making sure that they're measuring what they can measure, and being able to have a plan in place to reduce those carbon emissions going forward. So in terms of, that's in terms of our existing sponsorships. And then when we look ahead to our potential new partners, actually it's defining a few screening questions before we even engage, right? It's to identify if there are any red flags, anything we should be concerned about. We at Acore, we have an ethics committee, and we also have a sponsorship governance council where Brune is part of that from an ESG perspective. So we can actually identify any issues potentially with anything new that is coming to the table for the group. So in that way, we can help identify any potential concerns that we may actually stop conversations right there and then, or we need to investigate further.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. When we speak about sponsoring, we speak also about activation, about how do we implement the activation linked to the sponsors. Emilie, can you share maybe some purpose-driven activation that you are leading with Acore, that SailGP is leading with Acore, for instance?
Yeah, so I think for Acore it was key. The Impact League was part of, what was interesting for them within the SailGP League. And that clearly told us, we want your team to win the Impact League. It's one of their goals, being partner with us. And so the Impact League works at every event. We need to fill a report, but we also have this big project that we have to do during the year. And one of them, for example, is reducing waste. And we had a quick brainstorm, and for us it's become obvious, like we need to work on food waste. Like with Acore being expert, being major hospitality group, having all the knowledge, we couldn't not benefit from that. And we didn't want to stay at our team level, so we went all the way up to the league level. Like we have a lot of catering on site, we have VIP catering, we have team catering. There are lots of food being produced. And when you know like that a third of the food produced in the world is actually discarded, it's just something that you can't ignore as a sport event. So we decided to work with Acore. SailGP has really good sustainability standards. We had a food charter, but we looked at how we can even improve this charter. And we actually work with the Acore teams and say, what are you doing in terms of food? And from the beginning, how do you source your product to how you actually put your buffet in your hotel and everything. And we moved from a food charter to actually an action sheet that SailGP League is now implementing. And it's more about like everything. How do you choose your caterer? How do you rate your caterer so you make sure you don't work with them in the next year if they didn't tick some boxes? So it's really, and it's not just we do the document and it's finished. There was a real work and ongoing with Acore teams and SailGP teams to progress all together and to make the most from their knowledge. So that's one example, but we're also working on Acore with two other focus areas, which is clean energy. Acore is supporting the league, developing clean energy on some events through hydrogen generator solution. It's quite impactful for a sponsor to just activate like that, like supporting a league. And the third one is also diversity, equity and inclusion. We have a program at SailGP where people come for internship during events, and Acore is now giving the possibility for some of these interns to join Acore, and they have meeting with the human resources department and everything. So it's really like just what we do at the team level. It's like making it bigger and more powerful.
Thank you, Emilie. I come back to you, Fabien. We know that sponsoring is a mission to try to help society also to be better and to help tackle some sustainable issue. We know that it's also important to rework the commercial proposition value of a sponsors tomorrow, to redirect the financial flow towards most sustainable organization. What is your point of view about that? Can you also maybe explain us what do you think about reworking the commercial value of a sponsor to redirect the financial flow towards the best in class? I know that you are doing that with the IOC at 70 Sport. Can you also speaking about that a little bit?
First, I think we need collective action. The corporate sector has a responsibility, but the right holders also need to rethink, I think, the value proposition to be relevant to sponsors. And this is really important if they want to still attract sponsors and partners who really are not just coming for the visibility or the hospitality, they become a partner because of they feel that the property can become a relevant platform to manifest their purpose, to manifest their social and environmental objectives. So I believe it's a collective group of stakeholders, and I think we come back to the essence of what is a partnership. It's not just about, it doesn't have to be transactional, opportunistic. I think it has to be much more strategic. And yeah, I think it's a question of relevance. And I think that the companies that are already embracing that change and starting to really think with this approach, I think will be the ones that will remain relevant for the coming years.
Thank you, Fabien. Stuart, for you, when you signed the pledge, what is the main challenges that you face? Is it a governance one? Is it complicated to implement it? Is it to embark your employees, your collaborators? What is the main challenges of signing this kind of pledge?
I think there's a few key challenges. I think, as Fabien said, it's a collective effort. This requires a lot of people galvanized behind the same goal. Now, we all have the same holistic goal, right? The planet seems to have that goal. But we need to make action, and we need to engage the entire sponsorship community. And that is, yes, brands, yes, rights holders, yes, media, and the fans particularly, because Scope 3 emissions for rights holders is probably their biggest challenge. How do you reduce the Scope 3 emissions at sporting events? And that's fan travel, that is fan presence and spectator presence, because the rights holders themselves, many of them are doing fantastic things to reduce their own carbon footprint that they can control themselves. You know, SailGP, a fabulous example of doing that. But how do you reduce the travel, transportation, freight, emissions and impact, right? So that's kind of number one. Number two is galvanizing the community around the world from our perspective. We are a fairly complex business. We own 5,000, well, we operate, manage, franchise nearly 6,000 hotels around the world. Many of those we are not actually in control of. We do not own those hotels. So a lot of the decision making can be decentralized even at the local hotel level. So how do we make sure that we are reaching out, engaging, and making the decision makers at the local level make the right decision as well, aligned, being coherent with our global strategy and global approach?
Thank you, Stuart. And same question for you, Emilie. What is the main challenge, for instance, for right holders to implement this sustainable initiative and to be able to fit with some precise KPIs to respect, for instance, the Paris Agreement in the decarbonization strategy?
I think maybe the main challenge is to find the right partners. I mean, not all the partners. The problem is that sport need money, and planting tree doesn't bring a lot of money. So you need to find the right sponsor that has actually have the right values. And at this, I already been a bit ahead in their journey, and they're not starting. They need to already have thought about all these things. So it's finding them, and like after like finding them, like having the one that have the willingness to really engage on the subject and create some impact.
Okay, thank you, Emilie. And for you, Stuart, maybe a last question. If you want to convince other sponsors to join the initiative, what is your recommendation and what is your advice to convince them to join us on this transformative one?
My own view is this is going to be table stakes, just genuinely. It's going to be you fast forward 20 years, 30 years, well, actually even sort of 15 to 20 years, we're going to be up to 2050, right? And that's the Paris Climate Accord deadline, right? So many companies have signed up to that. Well, it'll become real pretty quickly. So what are you doing to make sure that we're going to meet those deadlines and be on the right side of history, frankly?
Okay, thank you. And for you, maybe Fabien also, what is your advice to convince people to implement this purpose-driven initiative? What can they do?
I mean, to Stuart's point, I think it's a question of relevance, and I think if you still want to be part of the game in a couple of years, I mean, you need to embrace change. And of course, it's always challenging within an organization to change, and there is a lot of politics, and it's always difficult. But if you look back in 5 years, 10 years, I think if you still want to be part of it, you need to. I mean, I think the risk is to do nothing, actually.
For sure.
The risk is,
Yeah. Emilie, same question. If you have to convince the right holders to implement sustainable strategy, to join this initiative, to be supporters of this pledge, what is your recommendation?
if you don't want to be has-been, you will. No, I think, I mean, we are really observing a shift in sponsorship, and now, like most, I mean, in the organization we work for in SailGP, like most of the sponsors are coming for the sustainability part, and this is really a movement, and if you don't want to be left outside of this movement, I mean, now a customer will look at the brand, doesn't look only at what the brand is doing, but is looking at everything around, and this is key, and the customer, like spot all the, like there was 22,000 spectators last weekend at Christchurch event, and that's the thing that we look at when they, you know, when they look at the brand and what kind of sports event are they associating with, and what kind of action the event is doing. So that's yeah, that's really important also for the customer and to make a successful partnership.
Thank you, Emilie. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Fabien. You can applaud them. Thank you very much.